All right, we're back with another episode. This is going to be a fun one, kind of getting back to a little bit more training, fitness, staying in shape. It's been a minute since I've had a resident expert on about this, but also getting back into fighting and self-defense. I want to talk and pick this guy's brain a lot. A lot of people referred him as someone to talk to. He comes from a fantastic team, ATT. Awesome guys. We got the one and only head trainer, Phil Daru. What's going on, Phil?
What's going on? Thanks for having me on.
Hanging in there. It's just, COVID. You can only work out with rubber bands, and that's about as good as it gets. You got to make do with all this bullshit. But here's the deal, dude. This is crazy, right? So gym's going to start to open back up pretty soon, right? So people are going to be able to train again. And I was thinking about this the other day with you coming on. Are people going to dive right in and just go full speed again? Or do you got to work up to it? Do I got to do some stretching in the morning? Should I start to do some stretching now? How do we do this?
Well, a lot of the guys, like the athletes that I work with, I've given them pretty much like a body weight program that they can kind of maintain at least their general physical preparedness. So their fitness needs to still be there, or should still be there. But if somebody's coming straight off the couch, then you have to develop that baseline of work capacity first and foremost, and getting them ready to go. And also we have to reassess, because at the end of the day, I can throw them into a position, but if they're not ready for that position, then obviously it's going to be detrimental to their overall performance and their health in general. So we got to make sure that everything's aligned properly. But for the most part, these guys are active, so it's not a huge deal. I don't work a lot with the general population, but if I did, or when I did in the past, if we had a long layoff, I would just basically have to run them through a baseline assessment, from a physiological assessment, working through movement patterns and watching their overall mobility and flexibility. And then from there, I can kind of base the programming, according to that specific individual and what they have going on at that particular time.
What if the person's like me and they're coming straight out of the gutter?
Yeah, so we definitely have to make sure that you're ready to go. So we would definitely see, movement quality. I would have to measure out your joint prerequisites, just a basic outlook of your body structure and movement capabilities. Doing a baseline aerobic capacity test, whether that be, a beat test, which is a field-based test that I measure out VO2 max, which is basically your body's ability to take in and utilize oxygen, and your maximal oxygen uptake in a sense. But that's going to give us a basic understanding of how much endurance you actually have from an aerobic standpoint. And then from a strength standpoint, then we just got to get underneath some load if you have the ability from a movement capability standpoint to squat, hinge, press, things like that. And I'm sure for yourself, you know how to do that.
Right.
So if we would get you underneath the barbell, then we can slowly progress you and then see exactly where you're at from a strength standpoint. But again, it's all progressions. It's all, you got to be patient and you got to enjoy the process, really. Is what I tell all my guys is you're not going to be, world's strongest man overnight. And a lot of times I don't need them to be. I just need them to be ready for the sport, and getting them stronger, getting them more mobile, getting them more powerful, and then increasing endurance is ultimately going to help them out in their fighting. But when you're talking about a general person, they just want to feel good and they want to look good. So for the most part, doing all of these things like an athlete, it's gonna help both sides. So if I train a regular person like an athlete, with the presence of mind to know that what they can and cannot do, as long as I'm training them appropriately and they're doing certain movements that are going to enhance athleticism, that's going to ultimately get their body composition right and make them feel better.
Now, that's deep for the average layperson, right? And it's a lot for people to understand. But what I try to tell people all the time, Phil, and tell me right or wrong, is when you're starting out or you're thinking of getting into any type of training, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to go every day. You get these people that are like, I'm going to start Monday and I'm going to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm like, well, then you'll quit.
Yeah.
Because you ain't going to last. You have to start out with something that's like 1-2 days a week, like especially with something like a jiu-jitsu training. I tell people all the time, don't go 4 days a week. And they're like, what do you mean I want to get in shape? I'm like, you won't last. You'll be dead by Friday. You won't make it.
Yeah.
At any credible gym, you won't make it. So, I try to tell people ease into it and ease out of it. And that's, and that's something that I think is advice that could go a long way. Maybe not necessarily for high level athletes, but, because they gotta ramp up a lot faster. So their day revolves around the care of their body, which is what you spend a lot of time on. But I want to ask you something deeper. And I meant to ask the hitting coach for the Yankees this, Rachel. Can anybody be an athlete? It's a loaded question, right?
I think you can. Yeah. I think you can acquire athletic tendencies and be athletic, but an athlete, I believe, you have to have certain qualities. Coordination, having the ability to learn very quickly, and that's by seeing and then doing. You'll know an athlete by the way they move, by the way they pick up things very quickly. But with that being said, a person who really isn't an athlete per se, quote unquote, can again increase their athleticism, which basically means increase their coordination, increase their functional strength, increase their ability to learn and process information very quickly too, as well, is very important. I don't want to say an athlete is born, but in all sense, you have to have a certain quality to you. And, you'll see it with the elites that I've been working with, along with the amateurs, and you see, okay, who's going to have what it takes to take it to the next level. And you see it every day. So for me, I would say it's very hard to identify, a lay person if they're just coming off the couch and be like, oh man, we can make him into an athlete or make her into an athlete. We can get them more athletically sound. I don't think that they're automatically going to be an athlete at 35 years old or whatever the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, right? It's like a combination. Mark Bell and I have talked about this, a bunch of us, and I noticed you trained that you're familiar with Joe DeFranco. It's a combination of things, right? It's coordination. It's having the ability to understand, and this is going to sound dumb in my opinion, the capabilities of all your limbs, what you can do with them, and how you can move and manipulate them. And then you can have the ability to do athletic things. Whether or not you're going to be an athlete is a whole nother leap of faith, right? And especially in the definition and context that you know it as. But I think, because I just want to get down to that question, and me and Tony Real World Tactical have talked about this. Is everybody born with the bones and the ability to do something athletic? And I think the answer to that to a degree is yes. Like you can do ping pong, you can do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I said. That you can train and you can get them more athletically sound. You can have them do certain movements and they can perfect those movements as long as they're obviously doing it the right ways and drilling it in the right manners. You even got guys that really aren't athletes that do really well in a sport like jiu-jitsu because they're 100%. Able to drill it over and over again.
It's yoga with chokes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I like
100%.
I like that.
Yeah, it's yoga with choking.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I'm gonna use that from now on.
Yeah, it's yoga with chokes. It's a jiu-jitsu. The reason jiu-jitsu is a good tool in a lot of guys' tool bags as far as how they train, and even if they don't do MMA or anything, is it just makes you feel uncomfortable. So if you're not used to being uncomfortable, when you have somebody on top of you or you're mounted or you're in a scramble, even like a wrestling style scramble, you're uncomfortable. So if you do it consistently, you kind of break through that feeling of uncomfortable. Well, you can feel uncomfortable boxing, but you can still in striking, but you can still move around and kind of hide that you suck a little bit better, at least. In jiu-jitsu, it's very hard to do that because anyone who knows what they're doing is going to break a freaking limb off in a second. But for the most part, when you train and you work with all of these people, and we have this debate till we're blue in the face about everything, right? where do you see the best athletes come from? Because you're the guy to ask this. And some people say it's basketball. Some people say it's UFC fighters. Some people say it's CrossFitters or the fittest people in the world. Where do you see them come from and why?
So the best athletes come from a wide range of different sporting when they're younger, right? So at a young age, if their parents put them in multiple different sports and have them develop a large base of movement quality, that's what I truly see. Like if a kid, plays football, in the fall, plays baseball in the summer, does gymnastics on the off time, things like that are going to enhance all these different qualities at a young age, because with that young age, your mind and your body is like a sponge. So you can soak up all these different tactical achievements or abilities and let it go over or bleed into, when you get a little bit older. Once you hit about 14 to 16 years old is when you really should start specifying. And then about 21 to 22 is where you should be at the elite level or the highest level of your athletic performance. And then what I say with MMA is very different, because you have to develop all these different methods and modalities of training. And there's so many mixed aerobic systems that have to be developed as well. So it takes usually around 8 to 10 years to truly peak in MMA. So with that being said, it would be a better benefit to you to have an athletic background, so that you don't have to worry about that, and you can just focus on the tactical and technical side of MMA, or whatever the case, whatever combat sport it is. But what I see now, just a common occurrence and a common theme, is that a lot of the guys that have been in the game, and I look at Dustin Poirier as like an individual that I would typecast as that type of person, right? He really didn't do much from an athletic standpoint growing up. I mean, he played, but he didn't do like true sporting events. Like he wasn't on a team sport or anything like that. He was just a fighter since he was 16, 15 years old. And we had to develop that athletic ability. But once, he started in the WEC, he was young. I think he was like 19 or 20 in the WEC. And now he's 30, 31 years old. And now you're finally getting to see him actually fight for a title and be in the running for another title shot. But it took him 10 plus years to get to that moment. And I think that's a general consensus that I see with all of the fighters at ATT, because you see those guys that come in. Joanna's been fighting for decades. Andre Arlovski's been fighting since I was in elementary school. So it's just, but you see it and you see, okay, where's their peak format? And I know I'm getting a little bit away from the question, but it kind of makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
Think about it.
It makes sense.
But what I'm saying is, like, the guys got to have an optimal amount of athleticism so that they can not worry about the other side of what they need to do, which is technical and tactical. If they lack that athleticism, somebody like myself,
you have to teach
a performance coach, needs to enhance the quality of their athleticism to enable the qualities of the skills. Does that make sense?
100%. Because what I always find, I always find interesting, and I'll draw a parallel so maybe you can bridge the gap, because I'm looking at it and I try to understand it. Like in the NFL, you hear about guys saying he didn't even play a down of football in college, or he played 1 year. Yep. He was a wrestler. You know what I'm saying? So what goes into the thought process of where the best athletes come from to fit in the puzzle? You see what I'm saying? Like now in MMA, and this is where I was going with the question, now in MMA they say it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and Muay Thai. Like some combination of that is what is the best things to have. So what I'm putting at to you is not only where do the best athletes come from as far as, in your opinion in all sports, but also when you're trying to, create the best athlete or find the best thing that fits, who comes up with that formula? Like, is it a guy sitting somewhere that says, hey, to Bill Belichick or someone? Is it a guy that says like, hey, we got to look at wrestling? You know what I mean? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, like I said, it comes down to having a baseline of movement capabilities, and that comes from playing so many different sports. It's not just one sport. It's not like, okay, this kid, you have tendencies like wrestlers. No matter what, they're going to have a strong mentality. They're going to be strong in the clinch. They're going to have, their ability to move freely through space. But then again, you got guys that do, let's say a karate-based background, right, where they have more ability to move, in and out of the pocket. They have the ability to change angles a lot better, So with that, I would say, and I'm talking to parents primarily right now, whoever's listening, is that don't put your son or daughter in one particular sport thinking that that's going to carry over to every other sport. You need to make sure you spread that out. And in the old Soviet Union, they used to have this rule. It's called the rule of three, where 3 years, from 7 to around 10 years old, is when they would do all basic movements and put them in every sport possible. And then once they got to a certain age, they would then put them in the right position to be successful in any sport that made sense for that kid. So with that being said, if you're looking at it, because I played football with Jason Pierre-Paul, and he obviously went to the NFL, but he didn't play football until his senior year of high school, which is crazy, right? But he had a basic outline of athleticism from playing basketball, playing baseball, I think he ran track, just a bunch of different movements, and a bunch of different sporting methods, so that it helped him out when it came down to football. He had the physical attributes, and then he had the ability to move freely, which is very good. The coordination, the ability to understand things, and then the strength and power, that's generated through just having one, genetic gifts, and also training just generally throughout his entire youth living. So I would have put a sport to it. Like I would say for MMA right now, obviously, if you're talking about having work ethic, a quality mentality to competition, the ability to work through certain positions and be strong in certain positions, then obviously wrestling would be the number one. When it comes down to drilling, when it comes down to practicing consistently but being very methodical, I would like to see a young kid start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because from a methodical standpoint, from a thought process standpoint, you have to be a better thinker when it comes down to gi jiu-jitsu, because it's a chess match, not checkers. With wrestling, and this is just my opinion, the guys they definitely drill, but it's hard drilling. It's nonstop. It's a grind. It's a constant grind. And you also have to have the mental capacity to get over that grind. I have a judo Olympian, Angelica Delgado, and she basically broke that down to me I think it was a couple of days ago, actually. And with judo, it's similar to wrestling because they do constantly grind. They're throwing each other, but you have to have that almost that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mentality where you have to be very technical in your grips, in your movements, in your positioning. And don't get me wrong, you have to be like that in wrestling. But what I'm saying is the mentality is a little bit different because they're always working hard. Right. Whereas a jiu-jitsu, you might come in and might have a light roll. You might just drill for the entire hour. And then it depends on what gym you're at. Depends if they're going to go hard in rolling for, 5 to 10 plus rounds or whatever the case may be. But in wrestling, it's always like that. Every day is hard. You know what I'm saying? So again, those individuals that come from that background are very self-driven and they're very hard individuals. So, I don't know if that truly answers the question, but it's something to think about.
No, you went actually ahead and answered the question I had after, which is how that formula gets made up and how that the puzzle pieces fit, because it's always intriguing to me the background that guys have and what makes the formula work, right? Because we've seen that evolution in MMA, right? Where guys came in and they were one technique or one discipline centric, right? And now it's evolved into these multiple disciplines, which is probably where you thought it would get all along. But as time goes on, we get what you're talking about, which is more data, right? So we start to get more data and we start to understand better in that particular sport. We just didn't have a lot of data on MMA. You know, now we have the data, the baseline, so you understand at what years people peak. And what I love about what's going on in MMA right now, and this is like a side note, is I love the resurgence of like the legacy matches. Like we just saw Matt Brown and Ben Saunders. You see what I mean? Like I love some of those legacy matches that are coming in now, because that shows me the sport's maturing and we're getting to see some of those like video game type fights that we wanted to see years ago but didn't get to see them. And that's always so cool, no matter what, especially because it makes an undercard mature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just fun.
It is. Yeah, it's good to see when you see two like great individuals, like, you know, that they both are going to come, you know, 100% and give the people what they want. And that's a show, but also a very technical show, you know, not just a kind of wild, crazy matchup. We want to see technical prowess. We want to see hard-nosed fight, but we also want to see the skill being, you know, executed greatly inside that fight. So I get it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you work with these athletes and, you know, you're someone who works with the best of the best, and that's what I dig about you. And you see these guys train. And I try to explain it to people all the time. And, you know, the best of the best are separated by fucking fractions, right? We all know that. What do you see in them that sets them apart from the middle of the pack and the bottom of the pack? And don't just do the hard work thing, but like, you know, what's the real, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it just that they bite down? And like, I tell people all the time, straight up, Phil, I'm like, if you want to get to that level, you have to be prepared to leave everything in your life behind. It's that severe.
Yeah.
So, you know, tell me what you think, because you're close to them. You're in there with the blood, sweat, tears. Tell me what you see.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, obviously the hard work thing, you know, the effort that they put in, the intent that they go into each training session is obviously, that's a given. And honestly, that's not entirely the whole thing, though. Like, you know, I think a lot of the guys now are very cognizant of how their body, how their body reacts to certain training stimuluses. And they gotta really be smart on how they can consistently train throughout each, you know, camp and year and career. So I think that, one, they're very smart. They understand their body a lot more than the lower level guys and girls. Another thing is that they pay attention to detail, and that kind of goes hand in hand with paying attention to their body. But paying attention to detail in every drill, every technique, asking questions constantly, and always wanting to learn more, which is something that I truly see. One of the guys, the guys that don't do that, the guys that don't want to learn, or the guys that want to do the same thing over and over again, they ultimately degress or, you know, end up getting worse because of the fact that they're not getting better, they're not learning, they're not improving, and that's an issue. And you see that with a lot of guys. I mean, I hate to say it, but like if you look at like a BJ Penn, you know, there's no evolution there, and he keeps hanging on to a certain style, or he tries to manipulate another style. And no disrespect to BJ Penn, he's a legend. But what I'm saying is that, like, what you want to do is you want to if you want to stay in this game, you better be able to adapt. And adaptability is key. So with that, I see the elites have that ability every day to adapt to a situation, and then have that, you know, that mindset of always wanting to learn more.
Yeah, and that's not easy. Like, I think you almost make that sound too easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to, you know, every day you have to be on. You know, you have to be on, and you have to be willing, like you said, to learn on a level that most people can't comprehend, right? Like, we're all jaded, okay? And I say you too with the most respect, because we're around some of the best all the time, right? So we're jaded people. It's like when I tell people in the firearms industry and defense industry, they're like, "Oh yeah, I love that gun. I'm gonna go get that." I'm like, "That's a $4,000 gun. You're gonna get it for free. Most people will never know what it's like to shoot that gun." You know what I mean? So we're jaded, right? So people don't understand. Like, you got to go back in your mind, you know, to the days you play high school or college football or whatever it is you did, And you have to understand, like, I don't have that capacity anymore. I'm 38, Phil. I don't have that capacity anymore. When I go to jiu-jitsu, I go for fun. It's borderline a hobby for me. It's, it's on the fringe. You know what I'm saying? I still try to hang, but it's like, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I've reached that point. I'm not there anymore. It's like powerlifting, I was talking to Mark about this. You do the best you can to hang on, but when you start having injuries, and I've had pec tears and bicep tears, it's a part of life, right? I had Seth Ferrocci on the other day. Seth, had a tricep tear, and I just said to him, it's just a part of life. Like, you get older, things start breaking down, stuff starts happening, and you get busy, right? And your focus can't be all the time on that. You have your business, your family, things you have going on, so it gets harder. But what I'm getting at is people don't understand when you're in that mentality, and you don't have to watch a freaking Netflix special to understand this. These people are so dialed in when they come into train. They're so dialed in. The focus, everything that goes into it is so insanely dialed in. And these people are prepared to leave everything in their life behind. They go without family. They live in holes. You know what I mean? They're like Rocky in the barn, and that's how you got to live.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't say is that they are extremely, it's going to sound bad, but it's so true, and it's very necessary, is that they are extremely selfish. Because they have to be.
You think Jay Cutler, when he won 4 Olympias, Jay's a friend of mine, I was with him the other day, when he won 4 Olympias, he wasn't selfish? He'll look you in the face and say, I was the most selfish human being on the planet. Because all he wanted to do was beat Ronnie. That's all he wanted to do.
Of course.
And he was so dialed in. Now, Jay's mellowed 50 times over now, but that's it. Like, that was his sole focus in life. He was prepared to leave everything else. All he did was eat, sleep, lift weights, and focus on Ronnie.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, one of the best in the world to do it. So,
and his famous line is, people would call me with their problems, and I'd hang up on them. I couldn't be friends with them. I laugh all the time. We both grew up in Mass. I've known Jay for quite a few years. He says it. He goes, that was true at that time. He goes, any distraction I had, I just cut it out. That's cold-blooded. Cold-blooded.
That's necessary. It's a necessary cold-bloodedness.
And that's what you got to have. And it's like anything else. Like, there's no mystery, Phil, why, certain people, right, the mentality, if you eventually, if you enjoy shooting sports, self-defense, everything, we use the term capable, right? You got to be a capable person. And to me, and I talk about this a lot with Coach Casey Halstead at 10th Planet here in Vegas, and talk about this with a lot of people around the way, you have to, I think there's a wanton desire. That's why I love MMA, fighting, jiu-jitsu, different things, and shooting and all these different sports, because I feel they all meld together, right? Because you want to be insanely capable. And to be capable, you have to have that ability to bite down, and you have to hone your craft. Like, you can't expect all the time to go out there and be a quote-unquote hunter-killer if you're not willing to necessarily put in the work, right? And that goes in the mats, in the ring, and outside of that, whether it's literally going hunting or things like that. You have to develop all those things, the ability to track, to understand people's movements. It's so much work, That's why I have the most respect for people that go out hunting on these big backcountry hunts. You have to understand how animals move, how they migrate, how they eat. I mean, it's insane. It's a whole nother level. I had a friend of mine send a video. He killed a bear with a bow at like 12 yards. And I was like, I would have been like, you know what I mean? I mean, I've seen bears up close like that, but like, just to have a bow? He had a spotter with a rifle, but I'm like, you don't hit that shot, that motherfucker might rip your face off. So that's a whole nother level. So you have to have that mindset. And I had Rachel on from the Yankees, the hitting coach, and she was saying to me, like, she has this, like, she likes to shoot, she trains. She goes, I really want to get into jiu-jitsu, John. I want to do that. And we were talking about that. But I notice a common thread. It's like a wanton desire to be the term I like to use, capable. You know what I mean? Capable. Like if somebody asked me, it's like saying, are they an asset or a liability? Is Phil a capable person? Because as well as I do, there's a lot of MMA guys that definitely want to get into more what I would call terminal, training, like something like shooting, and get more formal training in that discipline and those disciplines, because that's a discipline, and they just don't have the time or whatever, and they need, you know, they want to make the time. They have a desire to do it because they want to be capable on all levels.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it goes hand in hand. Capable. I like the word capable. I think every man should be able to be confident enough to shoot, to fight, to grapple, and also hunt, to be honest with you, in all aspects. And with that being said, it's like, you know, a lot of people don't have the time. They have other things that they have to do, especially if they're like running businesses or they got a professional career. That makes total sense. But at the very least, find, you know, 1 hour out of the week to learn something new that's going to enhance your capabilities as a human being and protect the people that you need to protect. So that makes total sense. I mean, I'm getting more into the tactical side. I'm trying to work. I am working with, going to start working with, obviously, the pandemic. I'm going to start working with tactical population, working with some of the police and also military. And these guys, man, are on a different level when it comes to mentality. And I see it with the fighters, you know, but with them, it's super life or death. You know what I mean? Like really, really, truly life or death. Mm-hmm. So with that, they have a heightened sense of understanding of life, in my opinion. And they're willing to put it all on the line at any instant if the time comes to do so. So that's really commendable. And I want to be around those types of individuals because that bleeds off into, you know, my own living too as well. You know, obviously, if you're a father, if you're a husband, I don't care. If you're a son, a brother, whatever, you got to be able to ultimately protect the ones that need protecting. And if you don't have the capabilities to do so, then that's going to be an issue when the time comes to handle your business. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing I'm kind of like uncovering as I've done these interviews, because I've probably had, I don't know, 20, 30 MMA fighters on, you know. I've had, you know, on one of the cards, I think it was 249. I think I had 6 people on the card that have been on my show. So I'm starting to uncover that formula, and I'm starting to notice, you know, a lot of these guys are, you know, want to get into and become more capable. I don't like using the term asset or liability. I like using the term capable, because I think you're an asset on every level as long as you're an athlete and you're willing, right? So like if the zombie apocalypse started tomorrow, right, and you had some level of training, which most people around us in our circles at this point in life do, you're an asset on some level, right? Whether or not you're capable is another story. You know what I mean? And forming what I would call the most well-rounded person you want on your team. If you were drafting a team for the zombie apocalypse, having some well-rounded people on there that are good at a little bit of everything. You're going to have some people that are just, you know, 1 or 2 discipline centric, but they're probably going to have to be what I call like a 5-tool player. They're probably going to have the ability to shoot, the ability to understand equipment, because that's the most underrated thing right now. I get people that show up to like Tony's classes. We look at them, we're like, motherfucker, he ain't ready. You know, like the equipment is everything. And then having the right equipment, having the right mindset, having the understanding to understand that not everything is going to work. You have to adapt and you have to overcome.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's on the fly.
That makes sense. I would say, you know, when it comes down to it, I like to be well-rounded, and I like to, even with fighters though, I think nowadays, like, they need to be well-rounded.
Have to.
This is a sport now where you're getting hybrids. You know, guys that have actually started training MMA, not kickboxing, not boxing, not wrestling. Like these kids started doing MMA in an MMA gym. So it's the same concept, right? Like you should obviously learn how to shoot. You should learn how to choke someone out. You should learn how to throw a 1-2. Like these things need to be, you know, obviously solidified in your abilities as a person. And that's male or female, to be honest with you, because I like to see females actually throw down a little bit, you know, and can take care of what they need to take care of.
Look at Valentina.
You know, in that perspective. Bro, that girl is a monster. Like, if I honestly think that she wouldn't need any man to help her out. but you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's so refreshing to see a female like that really take care of her own. Amanda Nunes is another one. Amanda hits like a dude, like literally like a dude.
Mm-hmm.
She can take care of herself. We really don't need much. She can take care of herself. But at the end, like I said, everybody should be, like you said, everybody should be well-rounded. And again, I would like to see more of the assets and the capabilities of a person if things do come arise and we have to do something drastic to save our lives.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to achieve. It's really not. And, we saw it in shooting. So shooting went through an evolution where essentially a lot of people believed, well, I own a gun, I don't need to own anything else, right? So there was that mentality for a long time. That's now evolved, through guys like Pat McNamara, Tony Sempena, different people that have come along through the years and kind of flipped that philosophy on its head, and now are more preaching, you have to be multi-talented. You have to have your hand in a little bit of everything, especially if you're going to have what I call like the capabilities to maneuver in an urban environment successfully, right? And have a heightened sense of awareness, constantly be going through those types of games in your head and scenarios and understanding scenarios. And there's truthfully, it's a lot of work and there's a lot of training that goes into it. And that's why, I think I have a theory, and you have a bit of an understanding of the bodybuilding world and powerlifting. I think the worst sport you can be totally focused on is bodybuilding in some ways. It'll develop you mental toughness, but it gives you, I feel, a false sense of confidence. And because you're building up the look, right? And I have a lot of friends in bodybuilding. That's known. That's fact. And they probably say you're crazy. But if I got them to think about it for a second, and I said, remove everything you know about hunting, fishing, striking, grappling, shooting, because I've been on the range with them. Is your weight and size an asset or a liability? Yeah. We'll see.
Well, I know that with that, they have the ability to be structured, have organization.
Huge pluses. Huge.
Diligent. Yeah, diligent. But when it comes down to physical attributes and things like that, like man, I know a lot of guys that come in. Yeah, they'll come into the gym. Big guys that just do bodybuilding, and they'll come into the gym and they'll get manhandled by a 16-year-old little boy, tossing them around on the mat. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that they just don't know their body. They don't know how to move, and they don't have the structural strength, really the functional strength to handle themselves. So
and to your point earlier, true. Can you give them some tools pretty quickly because they're athletes? Yeah, you can give them some tools pretty quickly. You can get them through a 5-minute round, right? You can give them a couple tools that they can defend themselves. And if, they have an athletic background, they can go a little bit further. But for the most part, that becomes a thing. Now, I'm not, again, by any stretch taking a poke at the aesthetics. The aesthetics come with hard work and with discipline and becoming more and more capable. But the reality is, you have to strip all that stuff away and look at the bones of it. And it's really one sliver in the pie, right? Like nutrition and diet are one piece of the pie. There's a lot of great athletes. There is a talent, we were talking about this earlier. There is a talent gene, right? So I had a friend, he'll remain nameless because I don't want to put him on blast. He said to me when he played with Tony Romo for years, he said, Tony Romo was the most talented son of a bitch I ever came across in my life. If he did any level of work, we would have won a ton of playoff games. We would have done a lot better. He's amazing in the booth. I actually like Tony Romo in the booth, but he said that. He goes, he was amazing. He goes, but if that guy put in, but he was the combination of talent and just doing enough work. And there is a talent gene, right? There is talent. Talent exists, but you have to combine it with the right training, the right hard work. What always blows my mind, the Chicago Bulls Last Dance things playing, is how some of these guys, they're so disciplined. But back in those days, like Jordan was saying, he goes, they were like smoking in the locker rooms, Phil. They were drinking. They were doing. Nobody does that shit now. You know what I mean? Nobody. It's those crazy days. It's crazy, right? And, you know how it evolves. But there were some insanely talented people out there. You know, I mean, especially now with this whole COVID thing, everybody talks about Babe Ruth, right? He survived like 2 pandemics, and he's not known for taking care of his body, right? And look at all the numbers he had and the things he did. I mean, you know, there was a time in baseball where they didn't think lifting weights was good. Remember? You know what I mean? So, you know, it all evolves and it all changes and it begins to shape our thought process now. And I think we're growing the last 20 years. And I want to get your thoughts on this. The last 20 years, we've grown leaps and bounds in what we understand about physiology and about the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think even athletes are beginning to understand it a lot more than just even coaches. You know, I still think we're like when it comes down to combat sports, we're still a little bit behind, as opposed to like, you know, football and basketball and those team sports. But we are making a step in the right direction. You got the UFC PI that's doing really well.
Yeah, it's great.
When it comes down to, like, you know, those guys are really, you know, breaking through and delivering education to the skills coaches to a degree to where they're actually listening. You know, a lot of times skills coaches don't want to listen for anything, but it's something that we have to make sure that they do understand, because what we're doing is going to be beneficial for the athlete. As far as, you know, when it comes down to proper nutrition, proper sleep patterns, you know, and then just putting the right things in your body, like that's the most important thing. Even though, you say like, okay, Babe Ruth used to smoke but still hit home runs. Well, also he was playing against the guys that also smoked and could hit home runs too as well. So it's not like you got to make sure you're weighing out the options. Nowadays, athletes are getting better. They're getting stronger. They're getting faster. They're getting more explosive as time goes on. You know, if you put, if you look at all the older times of like even basketball, look at basketball and look at basketball to now in this day. You know, you got LeBron James, who has the skill and the will, but also the genetic gifting is like, it's crazy. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to have to advance in times no matter what. These kids that are coming up are going to be even better and have more of a chance to show you extraordinary things. And I remember, you know, Roger Bannister running the sub, was it 4 minute mile, something like that. Now everybody can, like high school kids do that. You know what I mean? So it's crazy to see, but it's true. It's happening. It's happening though. And if you don't have the proper preparation to compete, at least, you're not going to be good at all. Like, you're going to be just an average person.
Yeah, and you know, you bring up the Roger Bannister thing, which is definitely like a clear one. You know, another one that comes to mind, I think, is 40 home run seasons, but before like 1990 or something. It was such a small number. I'll try to pull it up, but you know, it's something that's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's something that, but you know, you can't even wrap your head around because there wasn't that many. You know, you know, the numbers are relatively low, and now that's very commonplace. It's a common thing, and a lot of that has to do with nutrition, training, stadiums, the way they're built, just a lot of different things, but factors. But it has to be have to do with the ability to scout, to study, to look at things, and especially in MMA, you know, making a reference to film. I talk a lot about this with guys, how important film is becoming now in MMA. And guys are telling me, like, in the last 5 to 7 years, Phil, film is huge in the MMA. Before, you know, people watched a fight or two, but it wasn't like it is now. Now, you know, they're breaking film down and how guys fight so intensely on a level that hasn't been done before, especially in MMA and UFC.
Yeah. Just establishing the data and the stats of what's going on with that opponent, with themselves. Dean Thomas does a great job of breaking down film. He's done it for a long time. He's one of the guys that I came up with. I started fighting with, and Dean dissects every fighter and all their tendencies, and he can break it down and give you a full-on list of what you need to look out for and what the game plan should be based upon the opponent. And that's where you're going to see, it go in the future. Like when I was playing college football, we would have film study almost every day after practice. So that should be in order with a combat sport no matter what, because one, it's an individualized sport. It's acyclical. There's multiple things going on at once, and you got to be able to hone in on that particular opponent and your own game plan and your own abilities so that you can actually be good in the next fight or the fights to come.
It's insane. It's insane how much it's come in. I looked up the stat, and, till 1990, there was only 17 home run seasons in Major League Baseball in 100 years, Phil. 100 years, 17. Since 1990, in 30 years, there's been over 30. 32.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think a lot of that has to do with what we're talking about, the training, the diet. Of course you had the asterisk years in there, but you know what I mean? That it's still, I still think it would have been on an insanely upward trajectory regardless. You just have too many guys. That's 50 home run seasons. If you break it down and you look at 40 and you look at 30, I think you'll find that it doubles in every category. So it's one of those, it's one of those things that it's definitely on an upward trajectory for sure. And it's literally happening every year now, where it was like once every 5 of so many years, it would be a spell before you would see it. It was like, didn't happen all the time. And Babe Ruth had like 6 of them, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things that it's all evolving. And, I'm sure you remember this and I remember this, there's a time where we thought we'd probably never see an undefeated, quote unquote, undefeated MMA fighter. And I know John Jones isn't undefeated, right? But he's undefeated in my mind, right? I'm sure he is in yours. Yeah. So we may see one. And I think ultimately that fight, I don't know what it's listed now. Some people call it a no decision. Some people give him the L. I think that will be debated for a really long time. But at the end of the day, he could go down as a guy who's never been, what would you say, submitted, I guess, or TKO'd, So he's undefeated in my mind, right?
Well, we still don't know yet. He still has some fights left in the tank, and it goes with what's going to end up happening is that you're going to see him get tested when he gets older. Mm-hmm. So, like, if he stays in it for about 6 more years, you're going to start to see the evolution of those individuals coming in from not even in the UFC just yet, but coming up the ranks and then having that ability and watching John for so many years and really looking at him as the pinnacle and seeing him at the top of the mound. And from there, John doesn't even know these people, doesn't even know their names, doesn't even know what they look like. But those individuals are very talented, are working their ass off to get to John. And then when they do get there, they know every step and everything that he has in the arsenal. And then that's what you're going to see. Okay, how is John going to go ahead and combat that? How is he going to deal with that situation? Same thing happened, in my opinion, with one of my fighters, Joanna Jacek. I felt, one, she was on the mound forever. She's been in the game forever. And you have a young, talented, hungry Rose Namajunas that comes up the rankings out of nowhere and solves the puzzle. Mm-hmm. So with that, that's where you might see. That's why MMA in combat sports in general is so hard to stay on top. The reason why Floyd was able to amass all those wins is because he was methodical in his opponent, or I would say picking his opponent for the right matchup at the right time. Great business move. Don't get me wrong, but from a pure fighting standpoint, could he have fought, let's say a Pacquiao in his prime when they both were on top, or could he have fought, now a Canelo, now at his prime, instead of a younger Canelo that really wasn't polished enough? So there's a lot there that goes into that.
Yeah.
And it really just depends. It really depends on how well they can stand the test of time.
Yeah, and it, see, at his stage of the game, and I guess, he fought all comers, right? So he fought everybody in front of him, and that's what all you can ever say when you look at the great ones, whether it's, Jordan, Gretzky, everybody. Like, Jordan had to wait until the torch was passed to him. It was Bird, Magic, the Pistons, and then it went to him. He had to wait till that torch was passed, but his management and everybody had to learn that just one individual wasn't going to be able to pull it off. You needed that team around you. You needed that cast, and it wasn't until Pippen came into the fold and some other people that they were able to, like you said, solve the puzzle, right? Because you need to have a few horses in the stable. And the term I use when I coached football for years, played, I always say, you got horses, but you don't have thoroughbreds. You got to have a couple of thoroughbreds in the stable. And anytime I'm looking at something, I'll say, you got some horses, but and when you're at the top of your game, and in somewhere probably in his training, Mayweather, and he had the benefit of having been a legacy, right? His dad, his uncle. I think legacy was always on his mind. So when you talk about the strategy of him selecting fighters and playing that game, I think he always had the legacy piece on his mind, and he always was, aware of where he fit historically in things, and how the puzzle pieces fit for him and what that was going to look like, and if you go back through, like you said, and you look at, he racks up a ton of wins against a lot of people, we don't know necessarily who they are, where they are now, but then, like you said, as he starts getting into the meat of some of these divisions, he's kind of like, okay, I gotta beat someone to be someone, right? So he fights a Sugar Shane, he fights De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto. I'll give him, that's Canelo, like you said before, he really had it figured out, and he made a legacy for himself.
Well, But first, I mean, if you look at those fights too, if you look at Shane Mosley was almost out on his way out too as well.
Oh, he was 100.
So he still understood. He understood like when he needed to fight him. The great thing about Floyd is that he has control. Mm-hmm. He's always the A side. He has control on all the things. With MMA, and especially in the UFC, you really don't have control. Even though John is at the top of the mound, if a guy that they want him to fight, or is a guy that they want him to fight, he's going to have to fight them, no matter what. You know what I mean? You can turn it down, but there's going to be consequences because of that. Yeah. He can't solely go out there and be like, Dana, I want to fight this guy. And Dana may or may not let that happen. It has to be beneficial to the brand. So he's never going to be bigger than the brand of the UFC. He's never going to be that.
Yeah, it's the way the UFC
now,
is structured.
Floyd is so that's why MMA is very hard to stay undefeated, because they're not going to give you the matchups that favor you all the time.
There's only been one guy that's really cherry-picked his spots in MMA history, and that's Brock Lesnar.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a whole different story right there. Mm-hmm. But, like, I would say even Conor was given a good leeway into his superstardom because they knew exactly what was going to happen with that. Like, they knew that he had a whole country behind him. They knew that he had, the ability to draw a crowd, So with that, they did help him out. If you look at it, you look at all the Dennis Severs and, like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, those guys.
Yeah, there was a business. Really there was a business decision in there, of course. Yeah, 100%.
But then when he had to really, really put it down and fight somebody that was a good matchup for him or a bad matchup for him in any ways, then you see what happens. But not to say that Conor's not a phenomenal fighter. They all are phenomenal fighters. There's just too many moving parts inside of MMA for you to be flawless, in my opinion. But we may see it. I think we're about 5 years short, though. I think we got to wait about 5 to 10 before we actually see this happening.
Mm-hmm. I think with John Jones, does he have the ability to say, you know, like kind of like he did for a minute before. Hey, you know, maybe the light heavy division's getting a little interesting. Let me, hey, by the way, guys, I want to go unify the heavyweight title. You know what I'm saying? Like, take a leap up if that division looks weak, and he feels he can make, some moves in there. So he has a little bit of leeway. There's a little bit of leeway if you're creative and you're able to do that. But you're right. There's only been one guy, in my opinion, there's only been one guy that's been able to come in and manipulate the system a little bit, and that's Brock Lesnar. And that has a lot to do with what you brought up with Conor. He had the pay-per-view buys. He had the, in my opinion, he had a win against Frank Mir, and he had a win against Shane Carwin, which was probably his most impressive. And, beyond that, Brock was just coming in, bing, bang, boom, get a belt shot, out, bing, in, out, you know what I mean? Kind of doing the dance with it.
Yeah.
And he had the luxury of doing that. And that's what, made him unique and different. And that's what made him have the ability to kind of handle the purse strings a little bit. And that's something that, you don't see in the UFC, because you can't dance around in divisions the way you can necessarily in boxing, or the way it's structured with the way the promotion is run. But I look at it this way: if you fought everyone that came at you, or reached that 50 win, 60 win deal in boxing, you've done what you can. I mean, Floyd, if you look back, I mean, I think he had an impressive win against Ricky Hatton. I still give him a little credit for the Shane and Oscar De La Hoya, even though, like you said, they were at the end of the line. He still, handled them how he handled pretty much everybody else, which is great defense, and, did his thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think when you look at it,
I'm not taking nothing away from Floyd at all. He's obviously one of the best boxers in the world. But what I'm saying is, it's very smart and methodical with
100%.
who he picked to fight.
100%. And he fights everything on his turf, mostly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His last frickin' 10 fights, Phil, are in, most of them are in MGM. He's fighting everybody on his turf. Granted, a lot of the big fights come here, but, he's not going out of his comfort zone at this point in his career, and that's the bottom line. And if he's smart and he's aware of his legacy, the thing with some guys is they have, Manny Pacquiao was like, what was he, like a deity in the Philippines? You know what I mean? They're able to build out something off the mats, and they're able to build something, that's something I talk to my coach a lot about. And I've talked to, a lot of people about, outside of this. As UFC grows and matures, they run it, that whole team there runs it a lot like the WWE, where they're contracted employees, and it's very hard to break away and carve out your own thing. Like we mentioned, Conor, Brock, to an extent, Ronda was able to do that. I think you have to have more fighters eventually work their way up to doing that and building their off the mat stuff to a level where they can kind of control the spots they choose. And Georgie Masvidal, someone that's really interesting, because he's had this, resurgence in the latter part of his career, and now he's hot as a pistol, you know what I mean? And everybody's going to be waiting to see in that division, which is crowded as a motherfucker, by the way, what he, you know what I'm saying? What he does, and then what Colby does, and how this all plays out. But those are two guys that are savvy. They're building stuff. They're building their brands off the mat quite a bit, and they're able to kind of navigate that water, because that division, that is murderer's row. Yeah. Murderer's row. There's guys at the bottom of that division you wouldn't want to run into, if you were armed. You know what I'm saying? Because, I'm serious. I mean, that's the most loaded division maybe in UFC history in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a cross between 155 and 170.
Yeah, you had Ben Askren come in, who for all intents and purposes was the best fighter outside of the UFC, right? And he got the mat wiped with him. And it just showed where that division was, the level of that division. Yeah. Now, he got paid a lot, but it proved that was more of a win. Like Ben was like, oh, yeah, I know, but I made this. But Dana's the one laughing because he solidified that the UFC is the place to be, Bellator might have something to say about that.
Absolutely.
We'll see. But, I think at the end of the day, when you look at that division, you're absolutely right. It's very hard to duck. It's very hard to hide. You know what I'm saying? It's just too hard. It's too hard. And, how does that play out? Because you have a lot of your fighters in that division, a lot of guys, affiliated with ATT. How does that play out?
I mean, we've been dealing with this forever. I've had guys have to fight each other, and I would train them at 1 hour and then the next hour. Like we had the PFL, and I had Will Brooks and I had Rashid Magomedov fighting each other.
Yeah.
And that was for $1 million. So I mean, obviously the stakes were high, and they would basically be training on 2 different mats, but like right in the same room with each other. And then on top of that, and talking about sparring. Mm-hmm. And then when they come to me, I had Will at 5, and then I had Rashid at 6. Mm-hmm. And but it's we have enough coaches at ATT. We have like 15, 16 coaches, and we can kind of delegate and make sure that they stay away from each other, as much as possible. But yeah, it's no. I mean, I trained Tisha and Joanna. Tisha I started with, and Joanna's like a sister to me. So like they fought each other. It's just a part of the game at this point, with all of us. But when it comes to like, you got guys that have bad blood, with Jorge and Colby and
yeah, but is that real?
At the end of the day, it's
is that real? Is that bad blood real?
No comment. That's
I think everybody,
listen,
I think it is what it is.
I'm gonna say, I've seen the realness of it. So, yeah, I mean, Colby and you've had Colby on the show.
Oh yeah,
so,
I know the real Colby. Yeah,
yeah, Colby's a good dude. He's a little bit. I would say he may have been misguided in some ways of what he needed to do, but it's working for him.
I'll tell you, he took Kimura to the brink. He took that motherfucker all the way to the brink. It was close.
Well, he's a fucking outstanding fighter, like legit fighter for sure, without a doubt. And he could have beat Usman if
100%.
Certain things.
If he didn't get a little weird in that last minute, he wins that fight.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you never know what happens at the end, but and Masvidal is just a guy that is a no nonsense guy. So you get those two together, and obviously you have issues, but we'll see. I mean, they're both ATT. I'm both team guys, and we're gonna support them individually, even if they fight each other. We'll obviously make sure that we coordinate the schedules like we always do.
But how does it play out though? You have Usman in the top spot, then you have Colby, Georgie, Tyrone Woodley still lurking in the shadows, and you have Conor. How does it play out? I mean, where's the money? The money's obviously in Conor, but I don't see Conor fighting. Yeah. I don't know how that. I mean, how does that play out? Where does that go?
I don't see Conor being. I don't see Conor being a threat at 170. To be honest, you put him against like Usman, you put him against Masvidal. Even T Wood. Like you wouldn't even. I don't think he even stands a chance against T Wood, the real T Wood, like not the one we've seen against Usman. Like I've known Tyron since his amateur careers, because he's obviously I'm close with Dean, and Dean is his head coach, and he used to come to our facility and train. And that kid's a monster. Like that dude, when he's on, he's on. It just it wasn't there for him that night. So if he's up for a fight, it's over with. Like I don't think he was really up for that fight. You know what I mean? From what I've seen, and he wasn't really focused. If he's focused, if he's determined, and he's excited about a fight, it's going to be on. You'll see the real Tyron Woodley. So if he gives him Conor, we'll see something. And Conor's going to have to deal with that pressure, with that athleticism, with that explosiveness. Because the reason why Conor, I believe, is so good is one, his ability to get into people's heads, obviously, but also his awareness inside the cage. He has great distancing. He understands precision and timing. He has good reach for his size. Like his arms are freaking long as shit. So he knows how to get in there and pick his shots. But if you got a guy that's running at you explosively like a NFL running back and just dumping you on your head and then ground and pound, there's really not a whole lot you can do if you don't have that physical capability, you know. So I'm really interested to see that fight because I want to see Conor kind of rise to the occasion a little bit. But then again, I'm obviously going to be going with Tyron because he is a part of the team and I've known him for so long. But it would be a great fight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how all those divisions play out. I think I think for the most part, I think everybody's running from Tony Ferguson. I think he's the one they fear in those two divisions. You could tell me I'm wrong, but I see everybody kind of. He's one people are scared of a little bit. You know, he's a bit. You know, it's going to be interesting. You know, there's no doubt. I mean, he's struggled to even find a fight for a while because just everybody's kind of, you know, buying their time. Khabib, you know, it'll be interesting how he plays out because, you know, if they ever try to get that fight going again, it's going to be interesting. But you got, you know, Justin Guthrie lurking in the shadows. I mean, you know, who knows? And, you know, for Conor, he knows he controls the money. That's the key. He knows he controls the money. So he's going to have to match up with somebody that he can control the money, he can do something, and, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's, you know, Max is looking for what the next steps for him is. Maybe you see, maybe it's something where you see a Max Holloway again because they went to a decision, right? You know, maybe it's something like that because Max is someone that brings an audience, brings a lot with him. You know, and I think Conor is going to be looking for two of those kind of nostalgia type fights like he had with Cowboy, like one of those, and then maybe he'll take a shot, like you're saying. You know what I mean? So who knows? I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think what George and what Colby do is going to be the most interesting in that division. What fight they choose and how they choose it and how that plays out. You know, that's going to be, that division is just murderer's row. You know, it's just murder. It's scary. It's actually it's insane. But, you know, pound for pound, you know, you look at across the whole spectrum, you know, with the UFC, I feel they still have to an extent, you know, you mentioned PFL and we see so many other still fighting leagues. You got to kind of still unite the clans a little bit, you know. I don't know what Dana's next move is because I know he needs a ton of content for that ESPN. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out, right? Like how this all starts to unfold because he's solidified that as the place to be, but whether or not they're able to – because too many guys leave, too, to go get a payday at Bellator or somewhere else because – you know, they want to get the money. Like you said, PFL, $1 million fight. You know, they're putting up these crazy purses. And some of these guys that are, you know, 7 through 15, Phil, they're looking at it like, I could go over there and I can get a crazy purse. You know what I mean? You know, so you have to be thinking about that. They don't want to fight for 50 and 50 or 100 and 100 anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. Makes sense.
And that's what's going to hurt them.
I think people got they got to find a way to obviously increase the pay and get these guys going a little bit more and giving them more of an incentive. I know a lot of guys that have to almost get jobs in the UFC because of the fact that they're not getting fights and things like that. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I said this when Colby was on, you know, because he was doing his thing, being critical. I think for Dana and for the UFC, and eventually I'll get Dana on, but I think for Dana and the UFC, you know, when this lifts, I think they're going in the right direction. I think the PI is an indication of that. I think they have to get to a point where they come up with some system, Phil, where these guys are able to get ongoing care, whether it's having like a PI in Vegas and maybe a PI in Atlanta or Florida. You see what I'm saying? And they're able, like, if they fought, you know, 10 fights in their career, they're entitled to a certain amount of care for the next, you know, 20 years or from 50 to, you know what I mean? Some type of medical care. If they put that in, you'll see a lot of guys understand the long-term benefits of being in the UFC over time. You know?
Yeah. I would like for them to be in Florida or at least, you know, near Florida or in the East Coast.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think it's coming.
Yeah, because Yeah, for sure.
Because the best places, I mean, I want to ask you this, and I know we gotta jump, but the best places to train and the best places to be, I mean, if you're doing groundwork, obviously you can't rule out, the Renzo Gracie in New York. So I have to say that. But you got New York, you got Miami, Fort Lauderdale area where you guys are. You got Vegas, and then you have obviously Cali, right? So you have that mix. Atlanta's up and coming. Atlanta's up and coming as an area. You got a couple of 10 planets there. You get some good facilities. But I think that there's a huge benefit to them doing something on the East Coast. Whether or not it's going to be on the scale of Vegas is another story. But it's possible.
Yeah.
But I think if they put something in and treat it almost like a VA, at least in the beginning, where guys are able to, have access to the facility,
Yeah. No, that'd be great. To be honest with you, I'm gonna have to go ahead and give them a call.
I'm serious.
See what's going on.
Yeah, because I was talking about this with Matt Brown, and Matt Brown was critical. Matt Brown said it. He goes, when I retired from the UFC the first time, I didn't get a call from anybody. I didn't get a transition. Nobody reached out, nothing. I was just done, released by. And I look at the template that they use. The template they use, Phil, is the WWE template. And I think the template that they're going to follow is, you see how the WWE's put in, you have ongoing, you can go to rehab pretty much forever. Now they're starting to put in medical treatment and certain things because they're no longer treating these guys like contracted people. But you have to decide what's the cutoff. Like, at what point are you, or do you just increase the purses like they do in boxing and you say, fuck it, you on your own? You know what I mean? It comes down to, do you want your money now or money later? I think the first step is putting something in so these guys have an ongoing place to go and a place to receive, treatment care, because a lot of these guys want to open gyms. They want to do things. And I think they're going in that right direction because, I'm down in the PI like you are, having lunch, hanging out, and the food's amazing there, by the way, but hanging out, and I see where they're going with it, and I think where they want to go is to that place eventually where they'll come up with a formula. It'll be like if you fought, 10 fights or 15 fights, you have access to this facility for, the rest of your life to get, treatments, whatever, you know what I mean? Something. They have to put something in place to take care of these guys because their bodies go through a lot. You know that better than anybody, and they need to have that type of long-term legacy, because I know in wrestling, one of the things Hunter looked at was we make money off these guys even long after they're gone, right? Through things like the app and the ability to watch the old matches and everything on TV, and people pay $9.99. So they knew that. And he said, we have to honor, we have to create a Hall of Fame. We have to honor these guys after they're gone. And I think, people always say they're critical of the UFC because they didn't do that like right away. But there wasn't anything there to do yet. You know what I mean? There wasn't enough meat on the bone yet. Now the time is coming where I think you can do stuff like that, and you can have the ability to help guys transition out and still have a link and a tie to the UFC, but it's just going to be where you draw the line, right? Like, it can't be every guy that fought one fight.
No, not at all. I think, again, that would be like the retirement plan for all of these guys.
Yeah.
To at least have some sort of a connection still. But, again, it's still a fairly new sport, believe it or not.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that, but you got to think about the NFL. The NFL's been around forever. So, but hopefully we'll get to that point where we can do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Give me a shout when give me a link or where everybody can find you, where everybody can look you up, and where everybody can access you. Yeah.
So my social media, my Instagram is at DaruStrong, DaruStrong, and then my Twitter is at DaruStrong. You can check out my YouTube. It's still DaruStrong. I got a lot of videos on that, and then my website is DaruStrong.com. Very simple.
Awesome. Well. Listen, this was amazing. I don't want to keep you anymore because we went long, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I love everything that you're doing. I think it's amazing. Listen, keep doing your thing, man. I love it. I love watching it from afar. You got a great team. I love ATT, and I'm sorry to keep you on this long, and I can't thank you enough. And give Colby my best, and I appreciate you.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot for having me.
No problem. I'll talk to you.
All right.